So thank you, Nancy, for being here today on the Mental Insights podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you, and I think we'll have a lot to dissect and speak about within terms of the topic of mental health. Can you share a little bit about the organization One in Five that you created and give us a little bit of insight into, the motivation that helped you start this project?
I started the organization after losing my husband to suicide in 2008. And I spent about 2 years just educating myself about what I had missed because it really came out of the blue. And what I learned is that mental health really surfaces very young. By the age of 14, 50% of mental health is surfaced. By the age of 24, 75 is surfaced, and it takes 8 to 10 years to get service on average. And that was just really unacceptable for me. So I created the organization to put mental health education programs into area schools. And we have grown since then. So that is still one of the primary things that we do. And then we also work on stigma reduction. So we do a lot of storytelling, videos that we use on social media and on our website. We also do a lot of community convening where we're doing events out in the community, basically to normalize the conversation as much as we possibly can about mental health. We also truly believe that the youth population is going to change this conversation faster than the adult population. So we convene youth as much as we possibly can. We do an event called the Innovation Challenge, which brings together about 50 high school and college students in Cincinnati. We teach them about design thinking. They ideate all day on Saturday to come up with ideas of how they could change things in their schools. And then on Sunday, we teach them how to do an elevator speech. They do their presentation, and we fund 5 of those programs to move forward and to implement in the schools. We also have what we call the Brain Health Network in Greater Cincinnati. It's about 16 suburban schools coming together at the principal level to talk about what's going right, what's going wrong, how do we help them. And so it's just having that conversation nonstop. We also have what's called the Youth Council for Suicide Prevention that we partner with Cincinnati Children's on, and that's another 20 area youth that we meet with on a monthly basis. And I have 10 interns right now. And so we're constantly asking the question, are we doing this right, or how can we do it better? And then we're also working on legislation right now to make it mandatory that there be mental health education, kindergarten through 12th grade in the state of Ohio. That legislation was passed about 2 years ago in the state of New York, and about 2 months ago in Texas, and last week in Florida. So we're trying to get that passed. And then the last piece is that we really truly try to use data as much as we possibly can. People still argue with you that it's not a problem, and they can't argue with data. And it's a great sales tool out to other people out there just to educate them about what's going on. So I think that's a rundown of everything that we do in a very condensed version.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Nancy, because a lot of the topics that you spoke about are things that aren't necessarily being implemented within our country, which I directly think are so important. And I think what you're doing in terms of attacking the youth side of things is the utmost importance because, like you're saying, that's where the most change is going to happen. I think by you allowing children to be the innovative minds behind it is even more incredible. And I love the way that you guys do that because it really offers the perspective of how they can help their classmates, help their peers, which in turn they know the best about because they know what's going to take themselves to reach out for support, which is the biggest problem today of seeking out that support system, seeking out the help that they need. I,
Right.
I truly love the way that you're going about it, and I think it's something that needs to be implemented, in a widespread form across our country because the impact that I think you're making within Ohio can change the lives of, millions of people throughout our world today. And it's definitely such a great stepping stone, I believe, for the mental health community. And, to take a step back, I think this offers a good perspective, within yourself. So obviously you had a great deal of motivation and, a life event that changed the course of what you saw in terms of mental health and its priority within our lives. But for yourself, when did mental health become a priority for your own self? Was it the change in what you experienced, or did you have a focus on this beforehand? How has your own interpretation of mental health changed throughout a lot of this process?
I never thought about it before that. I mean, it was my husband, there was a lot of mental health issues in his family. But everybody was just like, Jim is different. He doesn't have a problem. Clearly, Jim just dealt with it in a different way. And I think that was a real eye opener for us of, it doesn't look like what you think it looks like. It looks different in so many different instances. And then, during that 2 years, just talking to so many different people, it really educated me about, it's very, very prevalent in our youth population. And as time has gone on, it's become more and more prevalent. And the more that I talk to, especially youth, it's frightening, actually. It's frightening. The things that they're dealing with, the world that they're living in today, the pressure that we're putting on them, and the impact that this world is having on them. And we just keep moving forward. And, their brains are not developed to the point where they can handle what we're doing, what we're asking them to do. So I've spent a lot of time just thinking about and educating myself about mental health. And, we say it all the time. We just need to normalize the conversation about it. It's your brain. It's just like your heart. It's a chemical imbalance. And if you were diabetic, would you not take your medicine? It impacts everything we do. So we just want to bury our heads in the sand and say it's different, but it's not.
It's something that I think is taking such a long time to normalize this conversation. It's such a revolving topic of you look at the way that our society treats physical injuries, and then if you look at the way that we treat mental illnesses, it's a completely change in perspective from our society. The physical injuries being something that we want to change and heal directly right away. And then when you look at people who struggle from a mental health challenge, it's something that's like shunned upon and something
Mm-hmm.
that we don't want to necessarily, focus or even become aware of, which I think is, that's one thing that needs to change before we can even start helping and healing other people.
Oh, absolutely. It's that, and we talk about it constantly. It's that education about, it's your brain. It's chemical. People can't control what's happening to them. And a lot of times, they're like, well, it's not like a heart condition where you go in and you say, this is the protocol and this is what we're going to do. And this person's going to get better. Mental health doesn't look that way. Everybody is different. Every recovery looks different. And so for a lot of people, it's just really intimidating where they're like, it's so hard. And I don't feel supported. I don't feel like I know it's going to work. And I try lots of different things and lots of things don't work. And you're just like, yeah, but if we can catch it early, if we can catch it really early, the outcomes are so much better. I mean, if you're gonna wait 20 years to actually get help, yeah, it's probably going to be hard to recover. But if you had a heart condition, you would probably be dead. So what's the difference? It's that we need to identify it early and get people into the help that they need, and they live a very productive life.
Exactly, and this brings up such a great topic because, like you're saying, for a lot of people, they experience a challenge at their youth. So a lot of people experience some type of trauma, or it just might be a development issue that they have, and for many people, they kind of see it as their normal. They think that this is just who they are, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't seek out those resources for 10, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, with what you're doing, you're attacking the youth. So hopefully they don't see it as normal, and they can help try to change their course of direction throughout their own mental health. And that brings up, the signs that hopefully we can try to normalize within, children seeing within themselves, within young adults seeing within themselves, or even adults. For what the work that you're doing, how do you promote any types of signs and symptoms in order for people to realize that maybe they should speak to someone, maybe they should, just share an experience with their peers, seek out a counselor? What is one way that you're able to normalize the conversation that someone needs to, speak through their challenges that they face in order to seek out that help?
Well, the thing that we really are very adamant about is that you do foundational training. You do foundational training with both the staff at a school and with the students. So everybody knows what signs and symptoms there are. Everybody has the language to talk about it. Everybody knows what resources are available. You make them practice actually saying the words, because people constantly say, I'm afraid that I'm going to do it wrong. I'm afraid I'm going to hurt somebody. And you're like, are you human? Do you have any compassion? Can you look a person in the eye and say, I noticed that something is going on with you. Like, can we have a conversation? This is what I've noticed. And then that person, a lot of times is just like, yeah, it is going on, and it's scary. And then you stay with them and you get them to where they need to go, and you take care of them just like you would with somebody that would have a broken arm. You don't just leave them. So it's that language, and it's that ability to know what you're looking for and what you should do about it. And then it's that compassion piece that we're connected to each other and we care about each other. And that has to be with their mental health as well. If they had a broken arm, you would care about them. If they fell on the playground and they broke their arm, you would take them in and call their, do whatever, call their mom, have her take them to the hospital and get it fixed. And if you notice that they're having an anxiety attack or something, then you need to actually go to their parents as well, talk to the mental health professional and get them into service so that they can deal with that as well.
That's great, and it's definitely such an important aspect to get both sides of it, in terms of doing it with staff and teachers to try to normalize their ability to reach out to students, or to speak with parents, which I think is something that schools worldwide need to actually implement. And can you speak about the importance of an environment for children to have a comforting environment in order for them to feel like they can reach out and share what they are experiencing?
Well, what we really try to do is we really try to look at the climate of the school. So we do a survey that asks the students, the parents, and the staff questions about, do they feel supported? What do they do in a crisis? Who do they go to? Do they feel comfortable going to that person? And then you really start to try to fill those holes at a school. So if it's a toxic environment, why is it toxic? What's going on there? And a lot of times it's starting at the staff where it's toxic. And so you have to fix that problem before you can actually fix what's happening with the kids. But then for them to feel comfortable that the resources they need are in the building, and that people have the language that they can talk to them and ask them questions about how they're feeling, and they feel comfortable. Actually, we really try to have mental health professionals that are in the building. So you're doing counseling during the day, because here in Cincinnati, on average, it takes 6 months to be able to get an appointment with an adolescent counselor. We have the largest adolescent psych hospital in the country, and we are overflowing those beds every single day. So if you looked at our medical director for the Children's Hospital says he thinks we have about 30% of the psychiatrists and psychologists that we need for that youth population. So if we get them in the schools, we can get them into counseling, and that person is embedded into the staff. So it's someone they're seeing every day. We try to have them doing other trainings with the kids. We try to do a lot of self-care. We do mindfulness. We do all kinds of things to give them tools that they can settle, that they can feel more comfortable with themselves. And also how to, when they're in a very stressful situation or they're feeling very anxious, what do they do about it? They actually have tools that they know how to breathe. They know how to go to the calming corner or do whatever that they can regroup and feel better.
That's great. And it translates to, I think, you're speaking about how there's such a lack of mental health professionals for everyone who's experiencing a mental health challenge, which brings up such an alarming rate. Within many states throughout the country, there's those wait periods where people are saying, why am I even going for support then if I have to wait this long?
Mhm.
What can I do now? And you spoke a little bit about of mindfulness and breathing techniques. Can you share some of the tasks, some of the routines that someone could do if they are in a situation of anxiety, or if they're feeling a sense of depression? What can someone do who's listening that can use a technique or an approach that can maybe settle themselves currently now where they are, if they can't seek out that resource, if they have that wait period for 3 months? What do you advise people to do if they have that wait period?
Well, we think mindfulness is a great tool. There are a lot of different apps out there. A lot of them are free. There's Insight Timer, which is free. There's Calm. There are quite a few different ones. Like John Kabat-Zinn is a great teacher. He has lots and lots of videos out on YouTube that you can listen to. So we think breathing is a very, very important tool that you be able to just settle in your body, that you can have some space to settle yourself. And then a lot of other things that we talk about on self-care are things like journaling, exercise, eating right, sleeping, all of the basic human functions that you should be doing, but people sort of lose sight of it. Have very strict restrictions on your social media, on your phone. When you go to bed at night, the phone doesn't go with you. Um, Engaging with friends, it's that personal relationship is very, very important. And that's what we find with a lot of youth is they feel very isolated. So who are their people, and that they identify who their people are. If we have them write them down on a piece of paper, so they should have their own age, and they should have at least two safe adults that are in their life that they feel very comfortable with, and they're written on a piece of paper. And when they're feeling down or they're feeling really anxious, that they can make a phone call to those people and engage and have them, be with them so that they can talk to them. So those are some of the big things. There are a lot of, exercise for a lot of people is really critical. Just figure out what it is that makes you feel good. So is it going for a walk? Is it just being outside? For a lot of people, it's just being outside, where you're actually outside breathing fresh air, in the sun, that kind of thing. It's much better than being in your house and feeling stuck in there, kind of a thing. So it's actually very very basic tools, but just reminding people that they need to actually do them.
Definitely. It's that reminder, I think, that always, comes into play in terms of if they create it as a routine or if it's something that's, left behind, which, when we have all of these different things pulling us in different directions, we can get lost in the sense of, not focusing on our nutrition or our exercise, which definitely, you know, is a big and vital part within our own mental health. And obviously, when you look at it when you're a child, you necessarily don't have too much freedom and awareness of a lot
Mhm.
of these essential daily, functions. But through your parental figures, throughout your peers, it can really change the way that you're going throughout that. And I think environment is definitely something that has a big impact on your own mental health, whether it's your family or whether it's your community and who you're surrounding yourselves with. So can you speak about the role that, whether it's relationships or whether it's environment, that can have such a vital impact on a child's mental health?
Well, I think it goes back to that safety issue again. So depending on the age of a child, they have to feel that human connection there. So who is that person? Is it a peer, or is it their parent? It could be a grandparent, but they have to feel that safe person that they can go to, and they can feel like they can say anything to them. And that's what we talk about. Make sure that you have a person in your life that you can say anything to, that you can explain how you're feeling, and then figure out what your joy is, what brings you joy, and make sure that that's in your life all the time. We actually have a school here that has a class at school now, that they do once a week. That is, the kids are finding their joy because they don't know what that looks like anymore. And it's building it's basically building those tools that allow you to, in that moment when you're in crisis or you're feeling really sad, that what's going to make you happy, what's going to get you to a better space, and give you some breathing space where you don't feel so confined.
That's great. There's so much factors within, our surroundings that can play a vital role. And, we spoke about, obviously you have a part within taking care of yourself, but as well, the people that you surround yourself with have a large factor in terms of, the way that you behave and act.
Hmm.
Within, the techniques and approaches that you bring within schools, can you share a little bit about, the practices that you bring to a school for, anyone who doesn't necessarily know the resources that you bring to a school? How do you go about your transitions into a new school? And just tell us a little bit about what you bring to the table in terms of how you teach staff members and as well children.
So we start off the process by doing a climate survey. Just as I said, it's with the parents, the staff, and the students, just to see where they are, to see what the climate is at the school, how much knowledge do they have, and then we do a needs assessment to find out priorities. What have they tried in the past? What is the culture? How much money do they have? How much time do they have in the day? And then you start to put together a long-term plan. When we say it's a building process, it can't happen overnight. You start to layer in a couple things at a time, because if you try to do it all overnight, people are overwhelmed and they stop. They don't carry on. So the foundational pieces are the education pieces that I talked about, that you educate the staff and you educate the students about signs and symptoms, about resources, about having the conversation. But then you layer on social and emotional learning, especially in the younger grades, where you start to develop tools there that they can deal with their emotions and with their anxieties. And then as you get older, we do a lot of peer-to-peer groups, because kids are very, very open to having this conversation. So you want them to be educated. We really try to do it more upstream. So they're looking at character strengths. What are their character strengths? How do they build off of those character strengths when they're in crisis? What do they fall back to? We actually go all the way to doing suicide screens. So that's an educational program, where we have conversation and then we do an actual screen. So we have a lot of mental health professionals in the building that day. They go through the screens right away. They identify the kids they need to talk to them. They talk to them and their parents that day, and hopefully they get them into counseling. And there have been a number of cases where we found kids that are very suicidal, where we've had to take them to the hospital right away that day. So we know that we saved some kids doing that screen. We also do speaker series for the staff and for the kids. A lot of times when it's a lot of that interaction where that storytelling, where somebody else who is in a good place can talk about their journey. What did that look like? How did they get well? What kind of advice could they give to someone? Last year, we did a lot of different movies that we did in Cincinnati, and then we would have a panel discussion afterwards. It was the movie Angst, so it was about anxiety. And then we had a student who was in college who really struggles with anxiety, and she talked a lot about her own journey, and then she gave like 20 pieces of advice to the parents. So it's that community piece back and forth where you're trying to, I don't believe in I should be up there preaching to the choir or anything. I think you need to bring in youth, and you need to bring in people that have actually experienced it in the past. It's much more, I don't know, insightful to people. They can make the connection with that person. We do a lot of self-care. So we do wellness weeks a lot of times, and there are all kinds of different activities the kids could do. And, we have therapy dogs. We had goats one day. We do coloring and journaling and mindfulness and other breathing exercises. So you're teaching them a lot of different skills. We also are really, we're trying to make a bigger deal about it at the school, where it's in every single newsletter that goes out. The principal is talking about it on social media. They're talking about it on their blogs, in their webinars, whatever they're doing, that it's an ongoing conversation that everybody is involved in.
That's awesome. Because it's great that you bring multiple approaches in how you educate, which I think allows at least the children to, accept a lot of this information in a better way. And especially
Mm-hmm.
coming from someone who maybe is close to their age, or has experienced something to a similar degree.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely brings a better perspective and a better awareness for them to see, what the next steps are and the signs and symptoms. It allows a better approach for them to learn and to educate themselves, rather than just saying, like you're saying, as you being the figure up top and saying, this is what mental health is, this is how you should approach it. It comes at a better light if you attack it from, different sides of the
Right.
spectrum.
Right. It's many people. It's they. We say it all the time. You have to come at it from all different angles. Different people have to be talking about it because everybody hears it a little bit differently.
Exactly. And, throughout society, there definitely has been a lot of, I think miseducation throughout, just mental health and the way that it's viewed upon, especially due to the stigma that has, continued to arise throughout this field. And, there's a lot of misconceptions, I believe, about, what a mental illness is and who that person is. So can you share about some of the misconceptions and some of the misnomers that we need to, hash out and get rid of, that, can change the way that people who experience or may not experience mental illness, that, can give them a better, sense and awareness of what it actually is, because there's a lot of change within the education and the approach if it's not from a well thought out and well planned organization such as 1 in 5.
Well, I think, we talk even in the schools is about the language that gets used about it. Like committed suicide, where like that needs to go away. It has to be died by suicide. Committed, it indicates it's a crime. It's not a crime. We also talk about the language that the kids use in the hallway. So like, they get a bad grade on the test and they're like, I'm going to kill myself. So the person that's next to them that's might be suicidal, that doesn't really resonate very well with them. And so you really have, I think in society, you think about the stereotypes that you see in movies, you see online. It's this crazy, and it's a crazy person. They have very little logic. They are, talking to themselves. They're disheveled. There are all of those kinds of stereotypes. And that's just really not true. If you look at our videos that we do, it's called I Am 1 in 5. It's across all demographics. Everybody looks like you and I. It's the person next door to you. And it's 1 in 5 people. So we say it all the time. You're in a classroom of 25 kids. It's 5 of you. You expand it out to your whatever, you're at the stadium, and how many people are here, and let's do the math on that. It's 1 in 5 of us. And it's just for people to understand that that's not, anxiety. A lot of times people are, it's, what does that look like? What does that feel like? I can't imagine, just tell them to get over it, kind of a thing. And you're just like, it's not that easy. So we with our innovation challenge, one of the team that won the most money this year, they want to do virtual reality, and they want to make it anxiety and depression, and they want the adults to have to experience it, because they're like, they don't understand. They're just like, get over it. You're like, you're just going through a phase, suck it up. And those are the kinds of things that are very detrimental to people that are experiencing it.
That's very insightful. That's definitely such a interesting way to approach it, because I never even would have thought of that, of having people who haven't experienced it, putting them into the actual experiencer's shoes so they can see that. And I think that's so insightful, because then they can actually see, what it's like to walk a day in their footsteps, which is so impactful, I think, and it'll change the course of how they perceive, people who experience a mental illness. And
Right.
that's one thing that I think I've been learning more about, and something that I try to educate other people is, although that 1 in 5 people struggle from a mental illness or a mental health challenge, everyone has mental health. Everyone
Yep.
needs to focus on their mind, the way that they behave, the way that they act. And I think that's something that really gets taken for granted, because you see society as the one that promotes, you need to go out and exercise, you need to go out and, enjoy nature and do all these great things. But there's not the hindsight of, you need to take some time to journal, or you need to take some time to perform some mindfulness breathing techniques. That's not something that's promoted yet. It's the same thing as physical health. It's mental health. It's something
Right.
that we all have. But if you're not struggling from a challenge, then it's not something that you need to focus on. And
That's just not true.
yeah, it's not
I
true.
mean, we talk about it's like it's a spectrum. We're all on a spectrum, on a continuum, and there's usually if you cross the line, then maybe you're into the illness part of the spectrum. But we all have mental health, and we all need to take care of our mental health. So we need to do just like if you're exercising, that's not just for your body, it's for your mind too. If you're sleeping, it's for both your body and your mind. If you're eating right, it's for both. And then just adding some of the mindfulness and those kinds of things, those are also good for your body. It lowers your blood pressure. It has physical impact as well.
Exactly. There's so much research behind it, but it's interesting that society has only really driven towards one side of that spectrum, which,
Hmm.
brings into the rise of why there's so much stigma within mental health, and why
Hmm.
it's such a perceived notion of, that's one group of people who experience it, and then there's all of us over on the flip side. And
Hmm.
that really doesn't allow for people to feel comfortable, to feel accepted into seeking out the resources.
Right. I mean, it's also, it's, all of us, I'm sure at some point in our life are going to go, we're going to be in the side where we're in the illness piece. A trauma will happen in your life, or something else, an illness, whatever, and you'll have mental illness for a period of time. So people need to recognize that, and to say it could impact anyone at any time. It's just not happens to be you at the moment.
Exactly, and at the moment is the key factor. And a lot
Hmm.
of people think if they haven't experienced it, that they might never, and that's not the
That's
case.
just not the case.
Yeah, it's the same exact thing as experiencing a physical injury.
Hmm.
Yes, there are people that do have mental illnesses, and they do last for a while. They can obviously last for a lifetime, or someone can obviously end their life due to that. But it's the same spectrum, because there's a thousands of people that have been able to overcome what illness they've faced, and they've been able to do it in a timely manner. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all about having the right support system and having the right availability in your life to, make that change. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, if you don't have that, then it is going to last for longer. So by providing the resources, as much as we can is the step one. And people not seeking that out is, going to continue what they're facing. And
Mm-hmm.
the stigma is something that we really need to figure out in terms of reducing that. And you are trying to educate, different backgrounds, whether it's children, whether it's staff members and teachers. But what do you think is one way that we can continue to reduce this stigma besides just sharing the importance of mental health? What's one way that we can bring a more positive light to such an important field?
Well, the one thing that we try to do is just storytelling, so it people can relate to each other in that way. And we have, as I said, we have about 50 something videos that we've created, and the interaction that happens with people when those get posted out there is incredible, because people will be like, "I had no idea you were struggling with this. I am too, and I've never had the courage to say anything. You now gave me the courage to say something." And I think we look at our like celebrities a lot, sports figures. They can change things faster than anyone else, because you look kids look up to them. It's Kevin Love comes out and says, "I have an issue," and kids are like, "Wow, okay, well, he's having an anxiety attack out there on the basketball court, and I feel that same anxiety when I'm out there playing, and so it's okay." And the more people that are talking about it, especially high profile people, I think the faster we can get to having reducing the stigma.
It's so important. And you're seeing now, especially Kevin Love and a lot of other high profile figures that are bringing out the importance of the conversation, which it brings the approach that we all suffer from, a challenge within our lives. It's a moment within, it's a short moment within our whole story, within
Hmm.
exactly who we are, which obviously it brings that light that people think you're always going to be this person with an anxiety disorder or with depression. But it's just a small it's a
The
small
moment.
yeah, it's a small moment within our life, and
Right.
we can always overcome the challenges that we face. It's just having the right support, having the right guidance from others in order to do it. And
Right.
you have to seek it out in order to change.
Right, exactly. I mean, the one thing that I would say is, it's like you have to have a person that's highly successful. Like you look at someone like Kevin Love, he's highly successful. He's been able to live through it, and it hasn't really impacted him that much. We actually had a president of the University of Cincinnati who told his story at one of our events. He's highly successful. He was very, very connected to people. Had lots and lots of followers on social media, and he told his story that he was diagnosed as having bipolar disorder in his 20s, and that he had attempted suicide twice in his life, and he had never talked about it. And he talked about it in an event, and it was like on the front page of our paper. It went viral around the world, and people are like, "I can't believe that you did that. Like, aren't you embarrassed?" And he's like, "No, like, I'm in a good place. Like, I got the help that I needed. I'm fine. I am living a very productive life, and you can too." And he's like, we have to have that safety net that we talk to each other, we care about each other, we get the help we need, and then we're fine. We live a productive life. And you have to believe that that can be true.
That's awesome. That belief system, I think, is what's most important. And hearing those stories, I think, is what creates that hope and that belief system that
Hmm.
they can see that there is something tangible that they can aim towards,
Hmm.
which it offers them the you know just the hope that they do have something to look forward to. Because for a lot of people, they think it's just normal, they think it's going to be their life every day
Hmm.
for forever. And
Forever, right?
that's something that I think, if we change that approach to what people can see, then I think they'll be more, you know, cognizant and aware that it's helpful to seek out the resources.
Hmm.
And it's not going to be an end all be all with what they're facing, which
Right.
it's something that still we need to continue to educate more people upon, and we need to reach everybody who's experiencing this issue. And that brings up the question of how are we able to reach the child who is still sitting in the classroom or sitting at home, that is listening and it's going through one ear and out the other. How can we tap into the people that are still going throughout their lives and they're not fully aware of its importance? How do we tap into those that aren't comfortable to reach out, and they're not feeling that support system that we were speaking about in the beginning? They don't have those two figures that they can reach out to in a time of need.
Well, that's why I think the schools are so important, because at a school, you have a lot of teachers that are there that are interacting with that child on an ongoing basis. And if all of them are educated and they are asking questions, or they're seeing changes in personality, or they're seeing, I mean, one of the other things that one of the other winners of the Innovation Challenge was that we're going to have like the little plastic bracelets, like the bright colored plastic bracelets that used to be popular a couple years ago. And in the morning, the child will come in and they'll put a medallion on their bracelet that indicates how they're feeling that day. So it's happy, sad, angry, hungry. And the teacher can track it over time, and they can see, is that child always sad? Or is that child always angry, which is another indicator of sadness? And those kinds of things. So it's giving the teachers the tools that they are looking at behaviors on an ongoing basis. They're educated and they know what to do if they see it. So that way you have a lot more people that are looking at it on an ongoing basis, rather than just a parent who, might not be educated or might be resistant to the conversation.
That's awesome, and such a great way for a child to communicate how they're feeling without them feeling, a sense of, vulnerability to actually share how they're feeling. It can be as simple as wearing, a colored bracelet, which offers you know, I think they'll feel more comfortable and more aware that they're communicating that effectively with the teacher, rather than telling everybody that they feel sad or they feel angry or they feel harmed due to an experience. And that allows the teacher to be able to then reach out after class or at
Mhm.
another time or speak with a parent, which it's definitely a great way to communicate effectively, rather than, I think, for a lot of children to sit down with someone and trying to have a teacher or a staff member peel out what they're experiencing. That doesn't allow for the right environment for the child to flourish and really
Mm-mm.
speak their mind.
Right. But I think if the teacher can identify it, and then they can get them to a counselor who is at school, so that they're getting that help during the day. They feel very supported. They are building tools, and you're building those relationships that they might not have outside of school, where somebody does care about them. They're asking the right questions. They're getting to the feelings that they're having. It's so
And
important.
it really is. And that it's within the topic of emotional learning and emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, which I think within children is definitely so vital, because that's when they really create their awareness of, how to manage and cope within emotions. And, within the techniques that you use within schools, can you speak about the techniques and just the importance of creating an environment where any emotion is acceptable? Because when we're young, emotions such as sad and anger and harm can really be displaced as all negative emotions, but creating that awareness that they're, available and acceptable for everyone.
Hmm.
It's important.
Well, we do a lot of work with even with the mindfulness. We do mindfulness training with teachers, and a lot of that is about that emotional elevator. So to not only for yourself, but the children that are in your class to be aware of where they are. Where are they, and what floor are they on? Like, why are they on that floor? Why are they on the seventh floor suddenly? What just happened in the classroom? And then to deal with those emotions and to do some breathing and to do some talking about, what happened, why are we here, rather than to say go sit in the corner. You put on your I'm going to separate you out of class, I'm going to send you to detention or something. That they actually do a lot more training around feeling those emotions. Why are you feeling that emotion, and let's try to deal with that emotion, rather than to say, I out of here, I can't deal with you right now, kind of a thing, which I think is sort of the old school way of dealing with it. And I think especially we know for a fact that, a lot of that anger is actually sadness now. And, a lot of kids come in with really bad behavior, and it's not because they want to be bad. It's because they've probably had a lot of trauma at home. They feel like their life is out of control. They have no support system, and they're coming into an environment where they see other people in different situations, and they're really sad, and they express it in anger. And how do you deal with that in the classroom so that they are feeling more supported rather than isolated and taken out of the situation?
It's such an important environment to create, because the way that children see emotions and see the way that it can impact their own, mindset and approach to their day, I think is so valuable, because they can go, like you're saying, from a harmful or toxic environment at home, and then be welcomed so well within a school system, within an
Mm-hmm.
environment where they feel, accepted and comfortable. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so valuable to have that environment to, have kids feel like they are worth more than, they might be experiencing elsewhere.
Right.
And I think there's definitely a lot of takeaways within mental health. There's a lot of different, lessons and ways to, teach such an important topic. But, I want to offer this time, whether it's another example of, that is profound for my audience to hear, or whether it's, just an approach that you think is so important that we need to focus on within mental health. I want to offer this time for you to share any, lesson or tip for my audience to, learn more about mental health, or see the importance of why it's such an important topic within society today.
Well, I think the biggest thing that we talk about all the time is just to normalize the conversation, that you not be afraid to have the conversation, and that you start from a very early age, especially with parents. Doctors, pediatricians now are starting to have a mental health screen as part of the yearly checkup, so that they can identify very early if something is going on. And I think it's really important that parents do the same thing. They educate themselves, they know what they're looking for, they're not afraid to have the conversation. And then if they see something, that they know what to do, that they actually take action and they get somebody the help that they need very early on. So it's really about educating yourself and just not be afraid. It's not that scary. It's just where this is part of the human condition. It's your brain, and we just need to talk about it. We need to talk about what you're feeling, what those emotions are, and then actually get somebody the tools that they need to be able to deal with it. um, I don't know. I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's, that we're compassionate human beings and we care about somebody, and our world is very toxic. And it's not the same as when I was growing up. That, we would spend a lot of time outside. We would have a lot of downtime. That's not the case anymore. Um, our it's at a crazy pace, and the kids never put down their phones. I go out to dinner a lot, and I say this all the time, that I don't think people get babysitters anymore. They take their 1-year-old, they sit them in the high chair next to them, they give them their iPad, and they don't speak to them for the whole time they're at dinner. I mean, what's that doing to that child's brain? I don't even want to think about it.
No.
Um, leave them at home. Don't give them the iPad. Don't give them a phone when they're 7 years old. You have to think about the things the impact that you're having on that child, their life and their body and their brain. And just to educate yourself. There's all kinds of studies that are coming out and showing the impact of what's happening with electronics and sleep and
Mm.
long-term impact that, people really need to educate themselves about. It's your responsibility as a parent.
It really is, because parental figures have such an important role within their children, within, I mean, their children learn based on their parental figures, and they impact their peers, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a never ending cycle if we don't try to educate and change. Like you were saying, the acting
Mm-hmm.
upon something is the most important step, because we can educate ourselves and speak about the importance of mental health and why we need to do certain things, but if you're not acting upon these measures, then we're all going to continue to be in,
Mm-hmm.
facing these challenges, that it's a cycle that we need to impact at the youth, which is exactly what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I think will be a different approach to a lot of what we've been speaking about thus far, but it's a question that I like to ask my guests, as the last question of the interview, to try to leave the audience with a good interpretation of what your life story has been about, and a key defining moment within your life. So I like to offer this time to allow you to think about your whole life story, and this time will be that you're writing a book about your life story, everything that you've experienced thus far. And what I want to ask you is, can you share, a title of one chapter of this book? And this chapter can be any lesson, any experience that you've had, any defining moment within your life, and give us a little bit of insight into why this is so impactful within your life story, within your life book.
Well, I think it's probably pretty clear, but that my moment is when my husband died. Uh, my dad was, I had a very close family, and my dad sat me down about 2 weeks after he died, and he said, "This is the deal. You've had a great life. You have a great husband. You had a great relationship. Your kids are awesome. They're on a great path. You have lots of friends. You have lots of family. Let's go." And I was just like, "Are you kidding me? It's been 2 weeks." And that was the shock of my life. And I would say today that I'm not the same person that I was at that moment in time, and I'm a better person. I feel way more fulfilled in my life. I would never have made that choice, but I'm in a much better place because of it. And it's you think bad things happen, and you have a choice at that moment how you're going to react to it. And I feel like we are impacting a lot of lives. We're changing a lot of conversations, and that's an awesome thing. So when I go home at night, I feel really good about what I did all day. When I went home before, it was, I was just on the treadmill. I was going to work every day, coming home every night. I wasn't changing the world in any way, shape, or form. And I think that people just need to think about what their gifts are and how they can utilize them the best way in the world.
That's awesome, Nancy. I really appreciate you sharing that, and it's certainly such a touching experience, and definitely one that changed the course of the way that you continue to approach and go throughout your life. But it definitely created such many beautiful moments, many opportunities that you're creating for so many people out there today, not even in just Ohio, but throughout creating these conversations. It's going to impact more people than you know, and it's going to inspire and motivate more people to continue the conversation that you're having and continue the resources and support that you're offering for a lot of people. So I really just want to thank you for the work that you do, for being on this podcast and allowing me to interview more about what you're doing, because it's something that I think will motivate a lot more people to see an impact within their life and really act upon it, and make a defining step, a defining moment within their life to impact people around them. And usually it's that defining moment that creates such a beautiful, event, and such a beautiful, response to such a tragedy that you experienced. But what you're doing is you're allowing a lot more people to not go through that same pain, and you're allowing so many people to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I really appreciate that, because it's a field that a lot of people are struggling with, and there's so many people that need the support and the resources, and you're doing all that you can to continue to break those barriers and continue to make change. So I really appreciate that, and I thank you for being on this podcast. I really appreciate you taking this time with me.
Well, it was great being with you today, and I hope it's helpful to people.
Thank you. I definitely think it will be, because I think my audience will get a good insight in terms of the work that you're doing within the school system, within attacking the youth perspective, which I believe is one of the most important things that we can do now as a society, is to really step into where a lot of the trauma, into where a lot of the challenges are starting. And that's what I think will be able to create the most change, and will be able to stop a lot of the, you know, young adults and adults who are facing these issues that didn't have the support system when they were younger.
Right, exactly. The youth is our future, so we need to take care of them right now. And I think that our youth are in crisis when it comes to their mental health, and it's really, I think, it's our moral obligation to
I
figure it out.
I completely agree. It's something that we need to, take full control over, and really attack as a society, and really make it our first priority, because it's, one of mental illness, and, suicide is one of the most leading causes of death today, and especially within our youth. So it's something that definitely needs our full hands, our full approach, to change and to help. So
Right.
I'm so grateful for the work that you do, and I look forward to continuing our connection, and sharing the importance of mental health in our society.
All right. Well, thank you.